to get a general picture of Monrovia and of the country as a whole, a country over which an ever-increasing number of roads is spreading. Small airplanes, however, are still an important means of transportation. The 50 landing strips scattered over the country serve to connect the farthest corner to the capital. Practically all of Liberia is covered by forests. Sometimes huge areas of water can be glimpsed in their interiors, areas formed by the heavy rainfall. For a European, this may sound astonishing, but in these tropical rainforests, the annual precipitation is 7 times as high as, for example, in Germany. It was from this village, in the heart of the forest, that a German engineer started out in 1957 to find iron ore for the Ruhr district. Together with a Liberian government engineer, he set out to trace an ore deposit, rumors of which had circulated for the past 30 years. Somewhere here there was supposed to be a mountain which consisted mainly of iron ore. But such rumors did not shake the villagers out of their traditional way of life. They continued to harvest their coconuts, cultivate rice, and to build their huts as their forefathers had done many years before. One camera, one geologist's hammer, a compass, a logbook, and a magnifying glass. This was all the 2 engineers took with them. And so, in the middle of the bush, they began investigating the mountain of ore. Old records guided them to the approximate location. The area in which they chose to search is called Bong Range, a range of hills covered with tropical forest. Over 60 miles from the capital, on the St. Paul's River, they came to Dobley Island, an island approachable only with a small native boat. Then, although the river swelled tremendously during the rainy season, their sandbanks and submerged rock made it impossible for larger ships to navigate. Yet, they had to reach this island because here lives a very important man, the district representative. Honorable Barclay is the son of a king. In the Republic of Liberia, his function is to represent the people of his district. Here we see him together with his chieftains walking through the landing place to meet Dr. Plotsky. He is eager to learn about the new possibilities of being offered to his district. The encounter is ended with the traditional Liberian greeting. Even the ground on which these trees grow contains some iron ore rubble. The iron content indicates to the engineers that the western part of the Bong Range, called Zaweah by the natives, most likely forms one large ore deposit. These observations are entered in the logbook. Dr. Kaup is president of the Gewerkschaft Exploration, which has its main offices in Düsseldorf. It is here that plans were elaborated for the further development of this project, and it was here that the decision was made to follow up the further investigation. A larger amount was to be invested in a precise determination of the potentials of this newly discovered deposit in Liberia. The Liberian government, a group of German iron and steel companies, and the well-known Italian Finzeater Company are partners in this project. 90% of the iron ore needs comes from overseas. The remaining 10% is mined in Germany. Details of the concession agreement can now be discussed with the Liberian government. The first step is preliminary discussions with the director of the mining office in Monrovia, the Honorable Massaquoi, and then negotiations with Mr. Sherman, the Minister of Finance. The concession agreement provides the investor with the legal guarantees necessary for the execution of his project. In return, the government receives a 50% share of the net profits. Dr. Sohl, president of the German Steel Association, considers the agreement as a further step toward German-Liberian partnership. President Tubman formulated the essence of his open-door policy with the slogan, "For creating jobs for thousands and making life comfortable." This is the inaugural parade of 1960, when President Tubman was re-elected to his high office. President Sékou Touré of Guinea, official guest at the ceremonies, witnessed the grandeur of a tradition dating back more than 100 years. Tubman's inauguration was also joyously celebrated. Here in the village, customs and habits are somewhat different. For instance, houses are still built in the traditional way, out of wooden posts, woven branches and mud, with a roof of palm leaf thatching. The European engineers also adopted this way of living. These three mud huts are the headquarters of the engineers who conducted the second, more detailed investigation of the mountain. And this is the mountain range, over 18 miles long and more than 900 feet high, their daily companion. Exploring with hammers and shovels, the engineers and their aides work their way to the ore deposits. Prospecting tunnel has been driven into the mountain. Now the composition of the deposit can be determined with all exactitude. Sides, holes are drilled into the mountain. The cords indicate the depth of the ore stratum, the iron content, and the amount of overburden to be removed. These ores were sent to Germany for examination and confirmed the first reports. The mountain consists almost entirely of iron ore. The portion marked in red is suitable for mining. This ore, however, cannot be smelted directly in the blast furnaces. Its iron content is not high enough. Therefore, ore must first be concentrated. With the large deposit of iron ore at the center of the mountain, a new industrial plant as well as a whole mining community is being built 50 miles from the coast. For the concentration of the ore, primary crushers and concentrators are being installed. A diesel-electric plant is being constructed along with an administration building, while various other shops and plants are going up in order to process the ore. For the employees and their families in this new mining community, a hospital along with new schools are also being built. As it is now, there is no easy access to the ore deposits. The forest must first be cleared and the way freed for roads and railroads. The mountain is stripped of trees. Some of the trunks can be utilized in later construction. In the heart of the jungle, a huge construction site arises. Later on, railroad tracks will be running here conveying the ore to the harbor. But at present, the terrain looks impassable. Through mountain and jungle, the huge machines work their way, leveling the bed for the tracks. Show great ability in operating such heavy machinery, and yet only recently, most of them had not the slightest idea of things technical, not to mention such complicated equipment as excavators and bulldozers. With this special machine, the railroad tracks are laid in record time onto bed prepared across the jungle. 5 engineers and 20 Liberian workers laid approximately 1.5 miles of tracks each day. The Liberians, coming straight from their native villages, were trained for their work in only a short time. Only a few of them could speak English, so the Bong Mining Company set up a special language course. But better than spoken word was the actual example of the engineers. They took an active part in all work, and the Liberians were quick to follow them. Here, pre-assembled tracks are being laid on the railroad bed. The engineers have exploited all possible ways of saving time. In setting up such a complex industrial project, it is paramount that all operations be integrated into one-time schedule. Planning for such a huge construction site must be flawless and function smoothly. Miles of railroad tracks will have to be laid from the Iron Mountain to the harbor. This will mean a whole new area opened up to traffic. For the construction of the railways and roads, the engineers also needed ballast. In the immediate vicinity of the pit, they found a suitable rock, gneiss. And here, drilling and blasting provide ballast for the railroad. Explosive is placed in the bores, and then the fuse ends are tied together. the crushing and screening plant, where it is crushed into the desired size and then graded. This machine had to be shipped across the ocean, as did all other machines, equipment, and materials required. Erecting an industrial plant in such virgin land means providing all the prerequisites yourself: streets, railroads, housing and utilities such as water and electricity. By the way, all the aggregates for the concrete used in the plant buildings come from this same quarry. Suitable sand, however, is not available in sufficient quantities, but the main objective, providing ballast for the railroad, has now been reached. The railway across the jungle to the harbor on the Atlantic coast is finished. Now the trains carrying ore could begin rolling. But first, the trains must travel to Bong Range, transporting machinery and equipment necessary to build the industrial plants. Everything that contributed to the development of this country has its roots here. This is the coast on which the Africans returning from America set foot more than 100 years ago, and this is where the capital was established. And this is also the coast from which, in our time, a company which needs loading facilities as specialized as does a mining company does best to tailor its own harbor. And exactly that is what the Bong Mining Company did. Today, machinery and equipment for the big ore concentration plant are arriving at the new pier. The new railroad line runs straight to the ships. In addition to the machinery parts packed to withstand both ocean water and tropical climate, the ships also carry supplies necessary for the thousands of people already living at Bong Range. The harbor office of the Bong Mining Company, record is kept of everything brought by rail to the mine. Later on, records will be kept of the ore trains arriving from the concentration plant in the jungle. This is the concentration plant with its 6 large bins for the crude ore. It is still under construction. Teams from America, Europe, and Africa are working jointly to build a dressing plant in which the most recent developments are represented. High-grade concentrate will be produced from low-grade crude ore. Dressing will transform the unprocessed ore containing 37% iron into a concentrate with an iron content of 65%. Spiral separators, water current helps to separate the heavier ore grain from the lighter quartz particles. The water transports the quartz mud into these circular thickeners. At this stage, the main body of the water is extracted and recycled. This engineer will one day be the manager of the large power plant at the Bong mine. Today, he is supervising the assemblage. He wants to be present from the very beginning to convince himself that every single part has been mounted conscientiously. The electricity which this power plant will soon produce would be sufficient to provide the energy for a city such as Heidelberg. These are the foundations for the primary crusher, through which the whole iron mountain will one day travel. The heavy-duty trucks dump the coarse ore into the large rotary crusher, and then it is broken up. When completed, This plant will be one of the largest of its kind in the world. At the same time, the sites on which the 45-ton trucks will reverse and dump their loads must be filled, leveled, and fortified. Many miles of road must be built on the site of the Bong mine alone. The Liberian workers who have gained their first experience in road construction here will later participate in other construction projects in their country once they are finished on the Bong. They have learned quickly and worked well. The training program provided here will have long-lasting effects. It would be impossible to mine this ore in the heart of Liberia without this dressing plant at the Bong mine, a plant which alone required an investment of $25 million. And just as here a large industry is arising, out of sight of the plant a town is growing in which 15,000 people will live someday. Directly or indirectly, their life will be associated with the Bong Range mine, a town with its own administration, with service, and all the facilities which belong to any large and modern city. Garden for the children. Here they grow